Hello and welcome to this episode of the Event Manager Podcast, the podcast for curious event professionals who want to stay ahead of the game. My name is Miguel Neves, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Event MB. In this episode titled Empowering Women Through Mentoring, I have the pleasure of speaking with Georgia Suttie, Venue Fine Operations Manager at Agito, and Sophie Conlon, Events and Communications Manager at the University of Essex, both of which are mentees in the Fast Forward 15 program. We cover a lot of topics around mentoring, including unusual career paths in the event industry, how mentoring inspires and supports event professionals, the value of a structured mentoring program, how a shared mentoring experience brings people together, and what we can expect from the current supply chain crunch, the brain drain that we're experiencing, and dealing with more and more last-minute requests. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and I invite you to check out the other episodes of the Event Manager Podcast with tips and insights from today's most influential event professionals. You can find all the episodes on our website or subscribe through your favorite podcast service. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Event Manager Podcast. Today I am joined by two aspiring and experienced meeting professionals from the UK. I'm joined by Sophie Conlon and Georgia Suttie. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. So I want to start with some personal introductions. This show is very much based on personalities, and I want to make sure to capture those. So, Sophie, could you tell me a little bit about who you are and how did you get to be you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I wouldn't say I followed a normal career path to get to where I am now. I think I really followed the motto of if you don't ask, you don't get. It was only a few years ago I was working in the background of the construction industry, and I always had like a interest for events and tourism, and I just was kind of like, just give it a go. You don't know, I need to tick that box and see if it is for me. So I literally reached out to a bunch of local event organizers and I said, can I volunteer with you? Can I do some work with you? And to which they said yes, and it went really well, and I managed to get paid positions with that, and now I'm in a full-time events role running corporate and educational events. So yeah.
And what's your role right now?
I'm currently working at the University of Essex as event manager there, running all of their events.
Okay. And what did you study?
I didn't do a degree or anything like that. I simply straight from college to work.
Well done. Congratulations. I think there's a lot of stories in the event industry of people who study or not, but do something completely different and then kind of land in events. So I think you'll find that you're not that unique in that sense, but
no.
There's so many different stories. And myself, I come from a music background, so I guess music and events are not that different, but it is a bit of a jump to kind of go in that way.
Yeah.
And Georgia, would love to kind of hear your story as well.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in like the hospitality business. My father was a general manager, so from a wee diddy dot, I have moved around a lot, and I think must be in my blood. So I've studied tourism and hospitality at University of Plymouth. I then did my gap year in Dubai, which I think just knocked it on the head for me, that I just loved everything in terms of events, venue finding. And yes, so I've now been in the industry for about 17 years. And I'm now working at Agito, which is an agency for business travel, and I'm the venue find operations manager. So I've been able to progress through from working on reception and making tea all the way through now to heading up my team here.
Brilliant. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So a bit of a fun question, but I think it touches on an interesting point. How do you explain to your friends and family, and I'll start with Georgia, what you do, and maybe not the ones that are in the industry, but the ones that are outside the industry? How do you tell them? How do you explain it?
My mum still doesn't get it sometimes. I'm just like, just think of a big conference where, if she's actually a nurse, I think, imagine like you're going on a training day, that kind of thing. That's what I would help, my team would help organise. So that's what I tend to tell her. Or yeah, I just said, imagine any kind of event that you would attend. We always support with finding and locating that venue to spur some inspiration and that kind of. I find it really odd because it's not the usual part. I know Sophie and I were talking about it earlier, which I think she'll expand on, but it's not like the movies, which I think a lot of people tend to think of, like the wedding planner or something, where you're walking around with a headset and a clipboard.
Yeah,
Sophie,
exactly that. Yeah, exactly what Georgia was saying. We were laughing about it a few minutes before this. We were saying that if you tell people you work in events, they just think, you're a party planner, which, I'm sure that we can all put on a great party, but the industry is so much more than that, and our jobs are so much more than that. But yeah, it's an interesting one, but I do hope that kind of stereotype goes a little bit throughout the years.
If anything, it's more pressure when, if you do host a party or something, like the pressure from your friends and family is actually a lot higher. They're like, well, you do this as a job, so I am expecting a really good soiree.
I know. I think I'm designated party organizer in my social group.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is a bit of a fun question, but it always raises an important point, that idea that people find it hard to understand what the event industry is and how it works. And so I wanted to kind of maybe start with you, Sophie, in terms of, in your view, why are events so important? Because, I imagine you're in this, obviously it's your job, you make money from it, but you must believe in events doing something special or doing something that's not common and therefore being worthwhile. And how do you think that works out? I mean, why do you think events are important in the global scheme?
Do you know what? I think it creates a sense of purpose for people. It's something different in their Monday to Fridays. It's something people can look forward to. And it's sort of like the groundings to, enjoyment in life a little bit, because there's so many different types of events on. People's lives are based around events. And it really does bring people together. And I think it's so important as well, because overall it will improve people's well-being. And yeah, life itself, really, I think.
Mm-hmm. Hearing you say that, I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, through the pandemic, we definitely had a bit of a shortage of these moments, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it really did go to show, without events, we were a lot unhappier. So yeah, definitely.
Georgia, you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it contributes to your social well-being. I think Sophie just touched on that exchange of ideas. I'm one that when I have a face-to-face, I was actually at a venue yesterday having a strategy day with two of my colleagues, and that networking part of being able to bounce ideas off each other, it really does help. And then outside of the actual events, even just meeting people of all professional levels that you haven't before, it increases your confidence. I just think it opens up further opportunities, especially if you've never started out in certain ways, or there's a wealth of experience out there to kind of draw upon. And it's not just, I think, about work either. It's also about, sometimes of that just general life stuff, which I think we've not done, and especially over like Zoom and stuff. You just talk about work and then it's like, right, next meeting, move on. You don't have that fun interaction and laughing about something that happened with your dog at the weekend, or that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely there's a whole realm of why events are important, and I'm so excited that all the face-to-face stuff is now coming back.
Great.
It's keeping me busy.
Oh yeah. Well, that's a good sign. That's good news. So I wanted to touch on the Fast Forward 15 mentoring program. I know you're both part of this mentoring program. I think a lot of people listening may not be familiar with what it is. So would one of you be able to give me a short description of what it is and how it works?
Yeah, sure. So it's a mentoring scheme that was founded by Faye Sharp. She actually recently received an OBE as well. So she set up the team in 2014, and it's a not-for-profit mentoring scheme. So basically she did it because around, I think, 75% of the industry being female, but less than 20% are in the kind of the top positions. So the scheme was kind of to provide impartial advice, support, that planning for your career and progression for women in the events industry. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's 15 of us, ironically, and we all got paired up with an industry, expert that can impart some of their knowledge and support us in our kind of our own personal goals. And it doesn't always have to be work related either. Like me personally, I had a goal to buy my house this year, which I've done. I've moved in, and that for me was thank you. That was a really big step in taking that next leap in a personal part. But then separately we talk about work stuff as well.
And Sophie, could you tell me a little bit about how it works in practice? I mean, is it structured? How often do you meet? How does that all work?
Well, when you have your interview, they kind of get to know what goals you want, what your interests are, and then you get, as Georgia was saying, a designated mentor. There are initially 10 mentor sessions that you have per year, and we have some educational days as well. We've got one next week in Brighton, which is basically all of us girls get to meet, and we're all really excited about it. And we get to meet and learn from Faye and industry leaders there, and they basically run workshops for us on like confidence building, CV workshops, how to achieve your goals, how to even work out what your goals are. They do educational days like that, which are really brilliant. And then with the mentor schemes, you get allocated 10 per year, but I've always found it really does depend on your relationship with your mentor. Like if I phoned mine up now, they'd have a chat with me and would have a meeting, and they actually are available there for you at all times, which is great. And the reason why the program's also so amazing is because the mentors are doing it all for free. They don't get paid to do it. And I just think it's incredible how these men and women want to help us in our careers. So yeah, it's a really rewarding program, and I would recommend it to any female in the industry.
Wish you lots of luck with that. I think hopefully people listening to the podcast will still be in time to register. If not,
absolutely, yeah, we are.
If not, I mean, I wanted to, before we kind of move on, I wanted to just make sure we really capture all the benefits of this kind of mentoring program. I mean, is this the first mentoring program that you've been a part of?
I've done one internally with work before, but I think because you have a mentor that is completely out of your day-to-day and out of that workspace, you really do get a different point of view. You get a sounding board that's not aligned to what your objectives are or what the company is trying to do. So I found that really beneficial in having someone that can give you a completely different perspective on something that's probably out of the norm. And I think I like that, and I like the challenge and the thought process of someone that you haven't worked with before. So for me, that's a massive bonus point.
And how important do you think is the structure around the program? Because I think some mentoring programs are a bit more open-ended. You can kind of get teamed up with someone, but it sounds like there's quite a bit of structure, and there's events and there's things that you have to do. Is that important, you feel, to kind of make the most out of the opportunity?
Absolutely, because you reflect, after each session that you have with your mentor, you're able to reflect on it, you're able to jot down those notes, which is then collated as well. So I think having that structure gives you a plan as well as how that time goes on. And exactly, what little goals are you hitting, or have they changed? Which is quite, especially over the last year, I think everything's completely changed. The goalposts of, is that going to happen? Are those restrictions going to lift? And I think that goes for our day-to-day lives. Our plans and circumstances change, and having that structure enables everything else that changes in your life. You can still follow that process.
Sure. Sophie, and in your perspective, for someone who might not be that keen on a mentoring program, might be on the fence, or might be like, well, I don't know if this is for me, this sounds a bit awkward, for whatever reason, they might not be that interested. What would you say to that person to kind of maybe push them over the edge? or, in a positive way?
Yeah. Do you know what? I would say this program has really taught me that you have to jump out of your comfort zone. When I first applied to Fast Forward 15, I had no idea what to expect. And I thought, oh God, these people are going to know, they're going to know so much more than me. And I'm going to feel like a complete newbie and I don't know what I'm doing. But when I started to come to terms with the program and I got into it, I really didn't feel that anymore. And I thought we all are really here to support one another. So if you are thinking of applying, I just wouldn't hesitate and I would do it because the rewards you see from it are so beneficial to you. And the community that us girls have all built as well is so lovely. Like, I think all of us have won an award or we've got a promotion or we've achieved some big life goals. And I would say that is down to Fast Forward 15. So in the past year, it's just such a big support network that you've got. And I think we probably talk every day, don't we, Georgia? Yeah. So all of us talk
in some
most of
form.
every day. Yeah. So and it's really great. And I think after our program's finished, we probably won't really know what to do with ourselves.
I know.
I hope that has some positive impacts that you can kind of keep reaping the rewards.
Definitely.
Great stuff. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more bigger picture now. We're at a really interesting time. We're all kind of hoping that events are possible in the next few months and during the next year. I don't want to say that the pandemic is behind us. I don't want to jinx it in a way, but we're all hoping that that we can all do that now. We can all plan events and we can all go forward with these things. What do you think are kind of the big challenges that the industry might still be facing in the next year or in the future, related to the pandemic or not? There might be other challenges that you see coming up ahead.
From my perspective, I've found probably the last 12 months probably the hardest. I think the unknown. I think I touched on it before, but that unknown, that movement of restrictions and guidelines has been really, really tough. And the biggest challenge right now is because we lost the wealth of experience from the industry where people had to maybe pursue other careers. We're now finding in ourselves that the demand is coming up, but we're bringing in brand new, green people into the industry, which is having probably a knock-on effect. But at the same time, there's so many opportunities now because new jobs are popping up. Those roles are expanding through in different pockets around the industry. So yeah, I feel like it's really exciting, but it's also really nerving because you're trying to balance everything in terms of what's going on in the world and trying to make sure that you're delivering the best customer experience and for people that are wanting to go back into the events world. It's been tough. Like, I'm not going to deny that. There's sometimes I've really struggled. But the recruitment part for me at the moment is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. Even I think Sophie and I were talking about even like where to go if you are someone that wants to pursue that career. Where do you go for that? Where do you go for that information now to know what you're looking for and to experience that? I think, and that's why things like a mentoring program, kind of looping back in with that, is actually a really good chance for you to explore those avenues.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I think thank you for admitting to these things. I think it's been incredibly challenging, and I think it continues to be challenging. Like you say, that there's a lot of uncertainties and a lot of experience lost. So we'll see what the next few months bring, and then how we manage to deal with all these things. Right.
I hope some people decide to come back to the industry because you go into it because you love it and you enjoy it. That's why we're both here, and I'm really hoping that people see that it's coming back, and then with those opportunities start applying again, because it'd be sad to see people leave after such a tough time.
For sure. And Sophie, any challenges you see coming up your head?
Do you know what? I think although that the COVID restrictions have dropped, which is fantastic, and we're all very relieved about that, there's still a level of uncertainty when we're planning events. Like, are people comfortable, speed networking? Are we comfortable sharing food at a buffet? And it's all just us trying to understand that and understand what the audience want and our guests want. So I think there is that challenge there in the industry still, because we're all still trying to figure it out even all these years later. So yeah, I definitely think that that's a big challenge there, but I'm confident that in time it will ease.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point. Just because the restrictions are gone doesn't mean that people feel ready for what you've set up or the events.
Especially
or the way it's working.
Yeah, exactly that.
And what about, in the industry, are there any things that you'd like to see change? Do you have any sort of pet peeves or anything that you kind of look at the industry and go, well, I love the industry, but if I could change something, what would that be? And I'll start with Sophie.
Yeah, for me, Georgia lightly touched on this before, as I know we've discussed it. I just think that the level of accessibility to recruitment is quite low in the industry. There's so many jobs out there and everything, but if you're new and you don't know anyone, you don't know where to look. There isn't an Indeed website for the events industry. You have to, sign up with an agency or, look on Indeed and things like that, look on LinkedIn and things like that. So if you don't know that and you don't have, like things like I do, like the mentor program, I wouldn't know how to do that. I wouldn't know how to get the best jobs in the industry. But it is changing a little bit. There's a man called Robert Kenwood. He has set up the Hub Jobs. I don't know if you know about him. He set up the Hub Jobs where he noticed that this is a need in the industry, and he set up this platform like an online job board, and that's brilliant. And I think we need more of that in the industry. We definitely need more of Robert Kenwood.
Good stuff. Yeah. And I think that it's interesting because that kind of links back to the start of our conversation. We were saying, how do you explain what you do? And it's such a kind of simple question, but without people really understanding the industry, it's hard to kind of find the industry and to find the jobs within the industry if it's so obscure in a way. Right?
Yeah. And the jobs are so diverse as well. And when you're looking at jobs, you're like, what does that mean? What is that different to this? There's just so many questions around it that aren't that clear.
There's not a lot of standardization, right? And a lot of companies call, maybe it's a similar job, but it sounds very different on paper, and to actually understand what it is. I think what we're also finding quite interesting is that there are companies advertising jobs that are clearly event manager jobs, but they don't call them event manager jobs. They have other names for it. And then you read through the description, it's like, wait, this is about organizing events, really, isn't it? But they don't really kind of have that. I just think people don't understand that is the crux of the job. There might be a marketing role that does a bunch of things. And it's like, well, actually, event planning is a huge part of it. So, is it right to be a marketing role or not?
Yeah, I actually had the same problem with my job now. And they managed to change my job title after me bringing it up. But before that, I was like, what does that job even mean?
What was your title before?
Events executive or something, but it's actually, the manager of the department. So yeah, I definitely thought it needed a bit more highlighting.
Well done you for managing to change the title. I think that's really good. That's really good progress. And Georgia, any thoughts on that?
I think for me at the moment, it's just general lead times. I think everyone is just waiting for, even when it comes to like contractually, that's the one thing that I would like to change at the moment. That just gives us a bit more time to be able to get things organised and boxed off. Giving 2 days for some of these size events that are coming through it just puts the team and myself under immense pressure to make sure, because the experience and the expectation is still obviously quite high, but with that short turnaround and then the knock on that has on our supply chain as well. It's just making sure that if you're planning something, try to do it as far in advance as you can. But I know that's difficult at the moment.
I know. I was going to kind of ask, well, I totally understand the frustration, but I'm kind of wondering what the solution is, because we've also talked about such uncertainty, right? And companies being so uncertain about when things are going to move forward.
Yeah, I think it's having that agreement. It's better to kind of plan or tentatively have something, and then be open and honest that that's the situation that you're in, and then we can do the same with our supply chain, so that again, in terms of like if venues are holding space and we're not sure, but it's we have a cutoff date and we agree those in advance, I think that would support it. But at the moment, what happens is it's just radio silence, and then we're trying to search frantically for availability. You're then having to probably approach 20, 30 venues, when actually we probably could have had those conversations in advance. So my ask would be try and plan and be open and honest with what your intentions are.
And let me dig in a little bit deeper. Do you see some openness from the venue perspective of being more flexible? Because you're asking people to sort of book a little bit further in advance, but they need to be.
Absolutely, I think they're again with the supply, going back to the supply chain part. I think they are experiencing the same, stoppers and blockers in terms of staffing, and even some days there was a time where I rang and they said, I can't help you with the booking for tomorrow, I literally have no staff. So in their respect, they're being open and honest so that we can share that back, so that they like our customers understand the pressures that we're under at the moment. Because I think some people don't think, they've read, it's just back to normal now, restrictions are lifted. It's like, but we're not back there yet. We're getting there, and the recovery will take some time. But yeah, in terms of like contracts, changing things, cancellation terms, venues and suppliers are being so much more flexible with us.
No, that's
which
good
I
to
think
hear.
it goes a long way.
Yeah, I think that's good to hear, and I think hopefully clients get that message as well, just to say, look, let's book these things, and we'll make sure to not penalize you completely.
Yeah, it's like an educational piece, isn't it? It's learning, changing the way that we've worked for so many years, and it's completely ripping up the book and starting from scratch, I guess. That's what It feels like anyway some days.
Well, thank you both for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure to get to know you a bit better and to understand all the ins and outs of Fast Forward 15 and mentoring programs. I think really fascinating and really empowering. I can definitely see how much it's helped and how much it's really kind of a big part of who you are, really. I think. I mean, I don't know if that's okay to say, but I feel like it's really kind of helped you. Yeah. Good to hear. So I wanted to get a recommendation from you of who we should interview next on the podcast. We always ask this of all our guests, and it always creates a nice little wheel or a nice little cycle that we can come back to and interview people. So I'll take one or one from each of you, if anybody you can think of that you think should be a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, Georgia and I were actually discussing this before, and we both agreed on, I think it was two people, was Georgia. I feel like because I mentioned Robert Kenwood from the Hub Jobs, I have to bring him in on the next podcast. And also we've got Charlie. She's one of our mentees on our Fast Forward 15 program. She set up her own event company during COVID, so she'd definitely be a really good one to talk to.
And I suppose it's focusing on all the recruitment and staffing part as well. So these two are probably quite apt for, based on some of our discussions today.
Absolutely. It sounds like you're not only thinking of the challenges, but also figuring out the solutions and supporting people that are figuring out those solutions. Right. So very happy to have those recommendations. Thank you again for being on. I hope you enjoyed being on the podcast, and everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed the interview as well.
Thank you very much
for having us.
Thanks. Bye.
All the best.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Event Manager Podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest news and the best articles on technology and innovation in the event industry, head over to eventmb.com.